Towards the end of Parshat Noach, we have the incident of the Dor HaFlaga, the generation that was dispersed, Migdal Bavel, the Tower of Babel. And the Torah begins this episode by telling us, Vayehi chol haaretz safa echat devarim achadim, that the entire land, the entire world, the entire civilization was safa echat, one tongue, one language, devarim achadim, and common purpose, common words. They then went on to build a city. The Torah elaborates that they made bricks and they built a city. And they said, here we will acquire for ourselves a name, Pen Nafutz al Pnei Kol Haaretz, lest we spread out. We want everybody to stay here in the valley. We will have a city with a great tower. We know the end of the story. Hashem watches, scrutinizes what they're doing, and changes all of their languages and confuses all of their languages. There's no common language that they can communicate with anymore. Everybody just speaks their native tongue. Nobody can understand one another. And eventually they just leave and they spread out, which was completely the opposite of what they were trying to achieve. They wanted to be all in this one location, in this one area, in the city with the tower. The Netziv, Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, the great Rosh Yeshiva of the Volozhin Yeshiva in Lithuania, has an incredible explanation on this episode. And he asks the question, what were these Devarim Achadim? What were these common words that they had? Safa Echad means one language, but what is Devarim Achadim? And he means that they were unified in their thought and their purpose. And that is that everybody should believe the same thing. We should all do the same thing. And people who don't toe the line will be dealt with in the harshest way. And in fact, he explains this is why the Torah elaborates about how they built the city using a great furnace in which the bricks were placed. Because if anybody didn't agree with their philosophy, with their way of life, they would be thrown into that furnace. He says that this is really an example of a totalitarian civilization, government. Everybody has to think the same. Everybody has to do the same thing. And they made the city with this great tower. They wanted to acquire for themselves a name. And he says that they had, like, as it were, a thought police. People who would control others and make sure that they wouldn't leave the environs. There was a tall tower so that they could see where people were going, because if people went outside of the environs, outside of the surrounding area, they were liable to find new ideas, and they didn't want people to have new ideas. They wanted everybody to think the same. And of course, precisely the opposite happened when Hashem confused their language. Unfortunately, things haven't changed that much today. And we are now living in a generation where there's also a thought police. That if you don't buy into a particular way of thinking, and you don't go with the mainstream, then a person's opinion is cancelled. We don't like what you have to say. In the past, in universities, was a place that was open for debate. You would have different opinions, and they could be opinions that were completely opposite with one another. But there was a room for debate and discussion. It seems, unfortunately, today, and this is very much on the liberal left in America, that a person who has an opposing opinion is just cancelled and is called a fascist or a racist or a right-wing or whatever the case is. God forbid that we should go back to the generation of the Haflaga, of the dispersion. Rather, we should be unified, but with the knowledge that people have different opinions, and then that's okay, and that can be tolerated. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.